Good morning. Welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual freethinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Laura Wink, your worship associate for this morning, and the service today is being led by our minister, Eileen Casey Campbell. This service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel. We will plan on continuing with hybrid worship services throughout the church year, so you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or later on YouTube as you prefer. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway. And whether it's your first visit or your 1000th, we're glad that you came. I have a few announcements to share. Please wear a mask. Masks are available for anyone who forgot one. RE and childcare are going to be provided by Pat Mells. We will be collecting the cards for Joys and Sorrows after our first hymn. Excuse me. Please fill them out or type them in the chat box on Zoom if you have something that you'd like to share. Also, further announcements. Next Sunday will be our animal blessing service. Please look for instructions in the weekly email if you have a special friend that you'd like to bring. Please note that we are inviting stuffed animals, pictures of animals, living or deceased, live animals who are calm and comfortable around a crowd if we're outdoors. Check for a church email that morning about whether weather permits for us to be outdoors. If you have children who would like to, also, if you have children who you would like to participate in RE this year, please fill out a registration card with the link from the weekly email. Any other announcements? No, okay. As we prepare to be fully together, I remind all of us to silence our phones and devices, and we now enter a space of worship. I invite you to join with me in our chalice lighting words as a flame is lit. They are in the gray hymnal, number 448. I need to find those. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
Today. It's so lovely lovely to see all of you, whether you're here in person or you're here on Zoom. So happy you joined us. I myself just lost a battle with our printer in the basement, and there's really nothing that really sinks you in to the theme of holy tools, which is our theme this season, than being outfitted by an electronics. But I want to tell you a story this morning about my mom. My mom was a caretaker to her parents as they aged, and both of her parents had different forms of dementia. And as she cared for them, she did what her nursing training at the time had taught her to do, which was that when they were confused, when they were wrong, she tried to reorient them to our shared reality. So when my grandfather at 85 would say, well, when I get back on the road and when I get back to work, I'm going to really be independent and you won't have to come over here so often. And she would say, no, Dad, you're never going back to work. You retired 20 years ago. You're not going to drive again. This is how it is now. And it was heartbreaking for her and for them to try and pull them into a reality that they just weren't a part of anymore. And now, many years later, my mom is the caretaker for my father, who has Alzheimer's. He's still in those early stages, but she has shifted her approach to caretaking. She's left her nursing career and retired herself, and has come into, I think, a more compassionate to herself and to my father way of doing things. So instead of reorienting him to reality when she sees that he's confused about something, she just joins him wherever his confusion is. So if he says, well, I didn't know about this appointment, she says, oh gosh, nobody told you. Well, here's what time it is, and this is when we have to leave, and this is where we're going, and here's what it'll be like. And she does that several times a day. And so when he says things like, I have this very important project that I think someone told me I need to do, and it includes archiving all these family photos, and she knows that in her reality, at least no one instructed him to do this. She says instead, okay, well, what supplies will we need? Should we get some binders, some scrapbooks? Should we get those little stickers that go in the corners of the photos? And joins him in the reality that he's experiencing. She has given up the sense of being right and trying to pull him into rightness with her, and instead has gotten to remain in relationship that's unharmed by trying to force a shared reality where there isn't one. And I really do think that this is why we come to church, that we don't always know whether we are right, and if that means that someone else is wrong. And if we can let go of that firm hold of being right and just be together, then we really get to build a beautiful community. And I'm so glad you're here to build it with us this morning. I want to ask you, whether you're here or at home, to rise in body or in spirit and to join with me in singing our opening hymn number 343, A Fire, Mist, and a Planet. Friends, we are a community who holds one another in our joys and in our sorrows. We tell each other in our celebrations and in our pain, we are with you. And so I invite you now, if you have something big on your heart that you would like to lift up this morning, you can write it on the post-it you see nearby you if you're here, or type it into the chat if you're on Zoom, and we will lift it up together. Are there joys or sorrows to collect this morning? Now it's time for a story. So if you're a smaller person and you want to come forward and sit on the floor so that you can hear the story better, even if you need to bring a grown-up with you, I invite you to do that at any time during the story. So this is a story about one of my favorite holy fools, the Islamic mystic Nasruddin. And this is a story about one of my favorite fall plants, the pumpkin. And so the story goes like this. Nasruddin, who was a mystic and spent his days often sitting under a tree thinking about God and the nature of life and the cosmos, was doing just that. He was sitting under an almond tree with his back leaned up against the strong trunk. And he was gazing out at his garden and thinking about God and the cosmos and the nature of all things. And he looked at the majestic pumpkin vines in his garden, just swirling round and round and round and ending in this big orange globe, this beautiful, magnificent plant. And then he looked up overhead and he saw these puny little green almonds growing high up on the tree. And he said, "Oh, Creator, why would you do such a thing? Why would you lift up high to the heavens these puny little sort of ugly nuts? And why would you put this magnificent, beautiful creation so low to the ground, down in the dirt?" And as he was lifting up this prayer of confusion, an almond fell and tapped him on the head. And then Nasruddin said, eyes wide, "Oh, Creator, let me never again trust your judgment," as he looked at the big 10-pound pumpkins in his garden and thinking what it would be if they were lifted up to the heavens to fall on his head. And this is the end of our story.
Now is the time in our service to join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts support our church in its work. That work is summarized in our covenant. In service of the values that unite us, we will recognize the inherent value of each person, foster a community of compassion and caring for all, value our diverse opinions, and engage respectfully in all of our interactions. 1/4 of our plate collection for the homecoming season goes to Literacy Volunteers for Ontario and Yates, an organization that provides adults the literacy skills needed to reach their full potential as individuals, parents, workers, and citizens. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash in the basket or a check, or if you're joining us from home by visiting canandaiguauu.org/connection/donate, or mail a check to UUCC at 3024 Cooley Road, Canandaigua 14424. In any case, make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering.
We have much on our hearts this morning. So we lift up concern for a dear friend with a serious disease, a sorrow at injustice and joy in nature. We lift up our gratitude at a surgery that went well and gratitude for a closing date on construction of a new home. We join together in joy at the warmth of the first fire in the kitchen of the year. And for all these and the joys and sorrows left in the silence of our hearts, we tell one another, we are with you. Will you say it with me? We are with you. So I ask Laura to drop a stone for these sorrows and all the silent sorrows, these joys and all the silent joys we hold. And now, if you're joining Pat in childcare, it's time to head downstairs now.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of all surround
And now is the time in our service for centering and shared silence. By shared silence, we mean, of course, the absence of grown-ups talking so that we can listen more closely to the sounds of life, to the cars going by, to the wind in the trees, to the wiggles and giggles of our children, to our neighbor's breath, to our own heartbeats. Join me now in this space of centering. Will you take a deep breath with me? Just one. Relax your belly, soften your eyes, let your shoulders fall away from your ears. Come, let us arrive at the edge of that great pool of silence within us. Will you take 3 breaths with me there? Feel the support of the earth beneath you. Feel your plans and worries, lists and ideas fall away for now. With hearts a bit lighter, come and dip a toe into the shore of silence. Gaze across this ocean so wide you cannot see to the other side of it. Would you take 6 breaths here with me at the edge of silence? Feel the tension in your temples fade. Set down your doubts and your certainties here on this shore. You won't need them. And let us wade into the stillness inside of us, which makes us no promises, offers no truths, just holds us. Will you breathe a while here in silence with me?
Spirit of light, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Giving light the shape of justice, truth's holy flows, wings settling free. Spirit of God, come to me.
One of my favorite seminary professors, the Reverend Dr. James Evans, died earlier this month. He meant so much to me. And I know I can lay this down here because this congregation, one by one, has seen a flood of individual losses, crises, and tragedies lately. So I know, if you weren't sure of it already, these last few months have brought us all the hard way round to understanding that our sorrows are lightened by sharing them. And our stories, even the hardest ones, are gifts when we offer them to one another. Dr. Evans was a remarkable scholar on the history of religion in the African diaspora. He was a looming pillar of a leader in the Black church movement in Rochester and beyond it, and a teacher whose warmth and generosity of spirit had no match. I had envisioned this sermon before he died around an idea that he planted in my mind years ago, and it seems only all the more appropriate to share with you today. He threw this idea out casually in a class I took with him, as if it was a crumb one might brush off their sweater and not the nugget of gold I have carried with me ever since. He said that often religious people or spiritual seekers look so hard for ultimate truth, for some definitive certainty, especially when we find ourselves, as Howard Thurman, that's whose theology we were studying in class, as Howard Thurman put it, with our backs against the wall. So often when things get hard in ways we never knew they could get hard, we look for some sure and steady ground to hold us. But Dr. Evans said, certainty is the death of faith. People come looking for certainty when their hearts are hurting, he warned. And far too many religious leaders are willing to offer it. But we lose the humanness and the humaneness of our faith when we refuse to engage religiously in the possibility that we might be wrong. I have come back to this over and over and over again. I come back to sit with this idea until I think I really understand it, and then remind myself that the idea itself is asking me to be a little less certain about its meaning. I come back to this idea, and I came back to it over the summer in an Uber with a stranger. I had had a mildly stressful day and was looking forward to the end of it. But I got into this Uber and said hello to the driver. I asked, I will admit, mostly out of politeness, if I'm being brutally honest, how are you tonight? And how he was in the mood to chat. So we chatted. He got around to asking what I did, and I told him I'm a minister. And I know my healthcare professionals in the congregation know that experience of telling a stranger what you do and then immediately being shown whatever weird rash they have going on, right? Well, I think in a similar way, ministers have a sort of resting tell me about your trauma face. And so I have done grief counseling at the airport and deep discernment in elevators and spiritual direction in a cab. So the driver poured out his worries about all his struggles in his own church. As a youth group advisor, the teens' questions, he felt, were getting more and more complicated for him to answer every year. He didn't know what to say to their theological queries about gender or relationships or the internet. So he finally finished, what do you think I should tell them about all that? And my eyes widened. I had about 3 deer in the headlights seconds there until Dr. Evans popped into my mind. I laughed out loud with gratitude for him. And I said, I think maybe you should give yourself permission to tell them you don't know. I know you're supposed to be their advisor, and it feels like you should come with wisdom about the right answers. But I had an amazing teacher who taught me that the only firm truth I should lean on is that certainty is the death of faith. Maybe your not knowing will be like an invitation to those kids to come and sit with you in that space of uncertainty. Now, I don't know if this driver took the advice he was asking for. Heck, we were only together for 15 minutes of our lives. I don't know if he even wanted the advice. Maybe he was just doing Uber pastoral care and making me feel needed and seen. But I do want to let Dr. Evans' call into uncertainty guide me as a leader. When I'm not sure what the right answers are, I try to say so, which isn't easy. I mean, it feels good to be right, right? I love being right. I love feeling like I know the answers to questions big and small. When I first stepped into a Unitarian Universalist church, I will admit it was not with the kind of openness that this faith actually asks of us. I wasn't looking to be opened to uncertainty and the unknown. I was looking for a framework of community that itself was open enough to fit all of what I was already sure about. Not super proud of it, but I praised the openness and flexibility of this faith while I carried all of my certainty right in with me. For a long time, Unitarian Universalism meant for me that I got to be sure and unchallenged about my beliefs in unknowable things like divinity, the nature of life, the goodness of humankind, the meaning of justice, so long as I didn't challenge anyone else's sureness. It was a space where I got to be right. So many of us come into community this way. If we find the right community, we can feel like we're always right. And look, I'm not here to hand out judgment on this impulse. So many of us come through these doors hurting and brokenhearted. It was a real balm to my heart to be right for a while. I grew up, like lots of us, too many of us, in a community that told me I was wrong in every way. My gender was wrong, my sexuality was wrong, everything my heart felt about God and goodness was wrong. My calling to this work was wrong. It was all lightness and hope to come into a community that promised I could feel right all the time. As long as I let everyone around me hold on to whatever I thought they were wrong about. But I haven't come across a relationship in my life that is better served by being right than by being real about what I do not know. What I wanted was to be right. But what I needed was a framework of community that could hold not my certainty, but my doubts. What I needed, which Dr. Evans so gently and clearly gave, was an invitation to sit in the possibility that I might be wrong. What we all need, I think, is not the spiritual stalemate of agreement, not to question anyone else's rightness. It's not the emptying of our faith so thoroughly that it contains neither truth nor doubt. What we need is a spiritual life that orients us in wonder toward what we do not understand. What we need is a community where we are invited to let go of individual certainty about the unknown and the unknowable, so that we might be transformed by mystery together. When we're able to soften the edges of our understanding, we make so much room to be connected to others. We open so many possibilities for our spiritual lives, not just to hold us, but to transform us. One of the tenets of Unitarian Universalism, if you can say we have tenets at all, is that revelation is unfinished. Revelation is unfinished. The truth of the universe, we say, is always unfolding. This understanding of truth was central to Dr. Evans' faith as well, and Howard Thurman's, who we were studying together. And I think it is really at the heart of that idea he planted in my mind. If we put our faith in the ever unfolding mystery of life, a love whose work is never finished, then certainty is, of course, the death of that. Too firm a grip on anything that feels like ultimate truth, that feels like our own correctness, cuts off our connection to truth that never stops revealing itself. I think it's like stumbling on a magnificent waterfall that strikes awe in your heart. Catching some of that flowing water in a jar, taking it home to say, here is the waterfall, I have it now. Putting our faith in a container of certainty means missing the always flowing, moving, generating, regenerating work of art. We can't take home the waterfall. We can't bottle it up and hold on to it. All we can do is maybe step into the flow of it and let it wash over us. We can't contain truth in our minds, just step into it for a time and let its beauty move our hearts. Anytime we try to hold on to truth, to own it, to be sure and certain, we cut ourselves off from our own potential for growth. Certainty hardens the edges of ourselves and leaves us closed to the transformation that can happen when we live in the possibility that we might be wrong. And I've come to believe, really, that transformation is why we come to church. We come here to be held and healed, but not to stay forever in the hospital for the spiritually wounded. We come to experience the rapture of transformation together. I did a year of chaplaincy at Albany Hospital, which is connected with Albany Medical School. And the director of the chaplaincy program there gave a lecture to the incoming medical students every year. And every year he told them the same anecdote. He told them this: he had gone to Notre Dame and he asked them to picture a football stadium. And he would make sure to say, I'm picturing Notre Dame Stadium, but picture whatever football stadium, any standard size football stadium you like will do. And then to imagine the head of a pin. And here is what we know, that if every star in the observable universe were the size of that head of a pin, then they would fill that football stadium 15 times. And so he asked those medical students to consider that illustration anytime they felt they knew for sure the answer. To consider how small we are as one person on one small planet around a medium-sized middle-aged star in a cosmos where stars the size of pinheads could fill a football stadium 15 times over. Imagine all of what we do not know. We have spent a lot of time, we Unitarian Universalists, trying to be the religion of reason, which is sometimes just another way of being always right. But when we long for firm and sturdy certainty the most, I think is when, as Howard Thurman put it, we have our backs against the wall. When we are in pain, in grief or sorrow or confusion, when we are in real trouble, we long for a solid ground of truth to hold on to. And Thurman, the theologian that I had been studying with Dr. Evans, a Black man born into rural poverty in the Jim Crow South, knew what it meant to be in real trouble, to wade through the senseless mess of white supremacy and never enough and so much grief. And Howard Thurman's mystical faith was not about seeking truth, but about seeking oneness with all life, with one another, in community, and through that effort, oneness with the love that seeks us all. So his approach to those times of big instability, deep grief, that mess of trouble, was not to reach out for anything solid seeming to cling to, but to go deeper. Not to make sense and lesson out of it, but to wade deeper into that mess. To let the heart have its feelings. To share big trouble with our beloveds. And let go of certainty. To let our uncertainty in the face of the unknown weave us more tightly together. The meaning of our sorrow and of our joy is not a treasure we get to keep. We cannot hold on to the cascading waterfall of mystery. We can only hope to step into the flow and find a oneness with it for some time. May it be so. Amen.
of safety till I sank it. I'm crawling on your shore. And I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountain. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to find. Closer I am to find. I went to see the doctor of philosophy with a poster of Rasputin and a beard down to his knee. He never did marry or see a B-grade movie. He graded my performance. He said he could see through me. I spent 4 years prostrate to the higher mind. Got my paper and I was free. And I went to the doctor. I went to the mountain. I looked to the children. I drank from the fountain. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to find. Closer I am to find. I stopped by the bar at 3 a.m. seeking solace in a bottle or possibly a friend. I woke up with a headache like my head against a board, twice as cloudy as I'd been the night before. And I went in seeking clarity. And I went to the doctor. And I went to the mountains. I looked to the children. I drank from the fountain. We go to the doctor. We go to the mountains. We look to the children. We drank from the fountains. Yeah, we go to the Bible. We go through the workout. We read upon revival. We stand up for the lookout. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to find. Closer I am to find. Closer I am to find.
Offer these words from Howard Thurman as a benediction. What I have written is but a fleeting intimation of the outside of what one man sees and may tell about the path he walks. No one shares the secret of a life. No one owns the heart of mystery. And I invite you to rise in body or spirit here or at home and join with us in singing hymn number 297 in the gray hymnal, Star of Truth.
The star of truth, what dimly shines behind the veiling clouds of
Please join me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. It can be found in the gray hymnal, number 456. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.